I was 74 when I got out of the hospital and came back to my own house. And something didn't add up. My wife didn't come outside. She didn't answer her phone. When I walked in, there were two men in the living room taking notes and measuring the walls. One of them asked me who I was. I told him my name, and he looked confused. That's when I realized no one in that room expected me to be there, not even my own wife. I stood there with my overnight bag still in my hand, wearing the same wrinkled shirt I'd left for the hospital 3 days earlier. One of the men looked down at his clipboard, then back at me, like I was the one in the wrong house. I asked where my wife was. Before either of them answered, I heard Linda's heels on the hallway floor. She stopped cold when she saw me. Not relief, not surprise. Just that stiff look people get when something has gone off schedule. "Harold," she said, "why are you home already?" That question stayed with me. Not "how are you feeling?" Not "thank God you're back." "Why are you home already?" I told her the doctor cleared me that morning. The infection was under control. My neighbor Frank had picked me up because Linda never answered the hospital's calls. She folded her arms and glanced at the two men. Then she said, "You should have told me." I almost laughed at that. I'd called her 6 times from my room. The taller man cleared his throat and said they were with a real estate office out of Columbus. They were preparing the property for listing. I told him this house wasn't for sale. He looked at Linda again before saying, careful and slow, "Ma'am told us she was the owner. I've lived in Akron, Ohio all my life. Bought that house in 1987. Paid the mortgage for 30 years. Repaired the roof with my own hands after a storm in '98. Buried my old dog in the backyard under the maple tree. There are things a man can hear and shake off. That wasn't one of them." I asked Linda to step into the kitchen. She didn't move. She said whatever needed saying could be said in front of everyone. That was the first time I understood this had been going on for a while. I asked her plain, "What did you do?" She said she had straightened out the paperwork while I was in the hospital because she was tired of waiting for me to get organized. Said the house was in her name now. Said it was better this way. Cleaner. Easier. Cleaner for who? She didn't answer. She just told the men to give us a minute. When they stepped outside, I asked to see the papers. Linda said I was in no condition to argue law with her. Then she said something worse. She said her son Brian had already spoken to a buyer. Brian, 46 years old. Never held a job longer than 8 months. Been circling my house for years like a stray dog that figured out where the food came from. I looked at Linda and asked one question. "Did you think I wouldn't come back?" Linda didn't answer me right away. She walked past me, opened the fridge, and poured herself a glass of water like we were discussing groceries instead of my house. Her hands were steady. That bothered me more than anything. "I handled it," she said finally. "You've been putting things off for years, Harold. The taxes, the paperwork, everything." I told her the taxes were paid. Always had been. I kept every receipt in the same metal box in the basement. She knew that. She'd seen me do it for decades. That wasn't the issue. The issue was she'd done something behind my back while I was lying in a hospital bed. I asked her again, slower this time. "Did you transfer the house into your name?" She nodded once. No apology, no hesitation. "Temporary," she added, "just to make things easier." Nothing about it felt temporary. I asked her how she managed that without my signature. That's when she looked at me. Not nervous, not guilty, just annoyed. "You signed papers before you went in," she said, "at the kitchen table. You remember that?" I did remember signing something. She'd said it was for insurance, something about hospital coverage. I'd been in pain that morning, dizzy from the infection. I didn't read every page. I trusted her. That realization settled in my chest, heavier than the illness ever had. "You had me sign it," I said. "You agreed," she replied. There's a difference between agreeing and being handled. I walked over to the sink and gripped the edge of the counter. My hands weren't as steady as hers. I could hear the men outside talking quietly on the porch, waiting like this was already a done deal. I asked her about Brian again. She didn't deny it this time. "He's been helping me," she said. "He understands how these things work." That almost made me laugh. Brian didn't understand how to keep a checking account balanced, but now he understood property law. I told her no one was selling that house. Not today, not next week, not while I was standing in it. She turned to me then, sharp. "It's not just your decision anymore." That was the first time she said it out loud. Not just your decision. I looked around the kitchen, the same one where we'd eaten dinner for 40 years, and I realized I didn't recognize the person standing across from me anymore. I asked her one last thing. "When were you planning to tell me?" She didn't answer directly. She just said, "You weren't supposed to come back this soon." That silence after, it said more than anything else she could have admitted. And that's when the front door opened again, and Brian walked in like he already owned the place. Brian didn't knock. He never had that habit. He walked in like he belonged there, keys in hand, talking before the door even shut behind him. "Hey, Mom, the agent said we can—" He stopped when he saw me. His face didn't drop like a decent man's would. It tightened, calculating. "Well," he said slowly, "look who's back." I straightened up from the counter. My chest still felt weak, but I wasn't about to sit down in front of him. "This isn't your house to walk into like that," I said. He gave a small shrug, casual, like we were discussing parking. "Things change." Linda didn't correct him. That was the part that settled it for me. I asked him what he was doing there. He held up a folder, thick with papers, and tapped it against his palm. "Working," he said. "We've got an offer coming in. Good one too. Cash." I looked at Linda. She didn't meet my eyes this time. I asked to see the paperwork. Brian hesitated just a second, then handed it over like he was doing me a favor. I flipped through it slowly. Listing agreement, preliminary offer sheet. My address printed clean at the top like it already belonged to someone else. But something else caught my eye. The ownership line. I didn't say anything at first. I just read it again and again, making sure I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see. Linda's name was there, typed clearly. But it wasn't alone. Brian stepped closer. "We're on a timeline here," he said. "Buyers don't wait around." I closed the folder and looked at him. "You're moving fast," I said. "That's how this works," he replied. "No," I said quietly. "That's how this falls apart." Linda finally spoke. "Harold, don't start." I ignored her. I asked Brian who told him the house was clear to sell. He frowned. "What are you talking about?" I tapped the folder with my finger. "This isn't finished." Linda's voice sharpened. "It is finished." I turned to her then. "You filed something," I said, "but you didn't finish it." Her expression shifted, just slightly. Most people wouldn't catch it, I did. Brian looked between us. "Mom?" I set the folder down on the table. "You can't sell this house," I said. Linda stepped forward. "Yes, I can." I shook my head, slow and certain. "No," I said. "You really can't." The room went quiet. Even Brian stopped moving. He looked at me like he was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. And the way Linda went still told me she was starting to realize it too. Brian let out a short laugh, the kind people use when they think they're about to win an argument. "Okay," he said, dragging a chair out and sitting down like he had all the time in the world. "Explain that to me, Harold, because from where I'm sitting, everything's signed." I didn't rush. I pulled the folder back toward me, opened it again, and laid it flat on the table between us. My finger rested on the ownership section. "Read it," I said. He leaned in, impatient. "I already did." "Then read it again." Linda stayed quiet. That told me more than anything. Brian scanned the page, slower this time. His brow tightened just a little. "It says Mom owns it," he said. "No," I replied. "It says she was transferred an interest." He looked up at me. "Same thing." "It's not." The room felt smaller all of a sudden. Even the air had that tight, waiting feeling. I tapped the line again. That wording matters a lot. Linda stepped forward. "Harold, stop twisting this." I looked at her. "You didn't transfer the whole property," I said. "You couldn't." Her lips pressed together, but she didn't answer. Brian sat up straighter now. "Why not?" "Because I never signed anything that removed me," I said. "Not fully, not legally." He shook his head. "That's not how it works. If she's on the deed." "If she's on it," I cut in. "That means I'm still on it too." That landed. You could see it hit him, slow at first, then all at once. He grabbed the papers and flipped through them faster, like the answer might change if he moved quick enough. Linda finally spoke, sharper now. "That's not what the lawyer said?" I turned to her. "Which lawyer?" She hesitated, just for a second. That was enough. Brian looked up from the folder. "Mom, which lawyer?" She didn't answer him either. I leaned back slightly, letting the silence do its work. "You filed something," I said. "Maybe you thought it was enough. Maybe someone told you it was. But you didn't remove me. You didn't get full ownership." Brian stood up now, pacing once, twice. "So what does that mean?" he snapped. "It means," I said calmly, "you can't sell this house without me." The words hung there, heavy and final. Linda shook her head. "That's not true." "It is," I said. "And any buyer with half a decent attorney is going to figure that out before they hand over $1. Brian stopped pacing. He looked at his mother. Really looked at her this time. "You told me this was clean," he said. Linda's voice dropped. "It is." "No," I said quietly. "It isn't." Brian turned back to me, something darker in his face now. Not confusion, not frustration, something colder. "Then we fix it," he said. I held his stare. "How?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at Linda again. And the look they shared. It wasn't about paperwork anymore. That's when I understood something I hadn't let myself think about until that moment. This wasn't a mistake. And whatever they thought they needed from me next, they weren't planning to ask nicely. Brian didn't raise his voice after that. That was the part that unsettled me. He just stood there, breathing slow, thinking. Then he pulled out his phone and stepped a few feet away, speaking low. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. "Not clean." "He's still on it." "What are our options?" "Our options." Linda stayed by the counter, arms crossed again, but this time her fingers were tight against her sleeves, not as steady as before. When Brian hung up, he didn't come back to the table right away. He looked around the house, the walls, the floors, the windows, like he was already measuring something else now. Then he turned to me. "There's another way," he said. I didn't respond. I just watched him. He walked closer, slower this time, like he was choosing his words carefully. "If you're still on the deed," he said, "then we just need your signature." Linda spoke before I could. "Harold, we can work this out." That word again. Work. I asked her straight, "How long were you planning this?" She didn't answer. Brian stepped in. "That doesn't matter." "It does to me," I said. He exhaled, annoyed now. "Fine, a few months. We've been trying to get things in order. A few months," I repeated. "So while I was getting sick, while I was going in and out of appointments, this is what you were doing." Linda's voice came in, lower. "We didn't know it would get that bad." That was the closest thing to the truth I'd heard all day. I looked at her. "You thought I might not come back." She didn't deny it this time. The room went quiet again, but it felt different now, heavier, like everything had already been decided on their end. Brian placed both hands on the table and leaned in slightly. "Look," he said, calmer now. "Let's not drag this out. You sign, we sell, everyone moves on. You don't have to deal with any of it." I almost smiled at that. "Move on where?" I asked. He shrugged. "We'll figure something out for you." "Something." After 40 years in that house? I shook my head slowly. No. His jaw tightened. Don't make this difficult. I'm not, I said. You already did that. Linda stepped closer, her voice sharper now. Harold, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I said. I'm staying in my home. Brian straightened up, and whatever patience he had left, it was gone. You don't get it, he said. This is happening. I looked him right in the eye. Not without me, it isn't. That's when he said it. Cold, flat, like it had been sitting there waiting. Then maybe you shouldn't be part of the decision. Linda turned to him quickly. Brian. But he didn't stop. We tried doing this the easy way, he said, still looking at me. Now we do it the way that works. I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not fear, not anger, just clarity. Because in that moment, everything lined up. The rushed paperwork, the timing, the way she asked why I came home early. They weren't just trying to sell the house. They were trying to do it without me ever standing in their way. And standing there in my own kitchen, I realized something else. This wasn't the first step of their plan. It was what came after that worried me. After Brian said that, the room didn't move for a few seconds. No one spoke. Even the noise from outside, cars passing, someone walking down the sidewalk. It all felt far away. Linda stepped toward him, her voice low but tight. That's enough. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. Brian didn't take his eyes off me. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said. I stayed where I was, one hand still resting on the edge of the table. No, I said. I'm just not stepping aside. Linda tried again, softer this time. Harold, please, just think about it. We can make sure you're taken care of. Taken care of. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized something I hadn't let myself admit all these years. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about what I was blocking. I already am taken care of, I said, by the fact that my name is still on that house. Brian let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. You think that protects you? He asked. I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know what they were capable of anymore. Linda stepped between us slightly, like she was trying to regain control of something that had already slipped. We're not doing this today, she said. Everyone just needs to calm down. But Brian didn't move. Today's exactly when we do it, he said. I picked up my bag from the floor, slow, deliberate. My body still felt weak, but my head was clear. I'm not signing anything, I said. Not now, not later. Linda's face hardened in a way I hadn't seen before. You're being stubborn. No, I said quietly. I'm being careful. Brian shook his head, pacing once, then stopping again. Fine, he said. You want time? Take it. That sounded too easy. I watched him. He grabbed the folder off the table and tucked it under his arm. But understand something, he added, turning back to me. This isn't over. I didn't respond, because I already knew that. Linda walked him to the door. They spoke in low voices I couldn't quite hear, but I caught my name once, and then the word delay. The door closed, and just like that, it was quiet again. Linda didn't come back to the kitchen right away. I could hear her in the hallway, moving slower now, like she was thinking through something. I stood there alone, looking around the room, my kitchen, my house, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Not after what I'd heard. Not after what I'd seen in his face. A few minutes later, she came back in. Her tone was different now, controlled again. We'll talk about this later, she said. I nodded once. No, I replied. We won't. She didn't argue. She just turned and walked out of the room. I stayed there a long time after that, longer than I should have, given how tired I still was. Eventually, I made my way down the hallway, past the living room, past the front door where those men had been standing earlier. And that's when I noticed something. The lock, It looked new. I stood there, staring at it for a moment, then slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out my keys. I tried one. It didn't turn. I tried again, slower this time. Nothing. I stood there in the quiet, holding a key that had opened that door for nearly 40 years, and somewhere behind me, I heard Linda's voice, calm, steady. "You should get some rest, Harold." I didn't turn around. I just kept my hand on that key, realizing piece by piece, I might not be locked out yet, but I wasn't being let in either. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. There's more to come.